Hello viewers, this is Nimra TV and you're watching Perspectives with me, MARYAM OlugboDe. A fresh appeal has been made for the release of Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. This time, it comes from the American military veterans of Igbo descent, the VID, a group of US military veterans with Nigerian roots who have openly called on President Bola Tinubu to set Kanu free. The argument is continued detention is not just unlawful, but a political problem that Nigeria's leadership must resolve. Another day, another crisis in the Middle East. This time, Israel has made a bold move. It is blocking humanitarian aid from entering Gaza unless Hamas agrees to extend the ceasefire. A simple demand or a high-stakes gamble. For Tel Aviv, this is a pressure tactic, a way to force Hamas to the negotiating table. Usually, officials argue that every previous ceasefire has been used by Hamas to regroup, rearm, and prepare for more attacks. Why should this time be any different? The logic is clear. If Hamas wants food, medicine, and supplies for the people of Gaza, it must first agree to an extension of peace. But on the other side, Hamas is calling Israel's move blackmail. The group insists that humanitarian aid should not be conditional. The world is watching. The question remains, does anyone really have the power to change the situation? High-stakes negotiation, a tense Oval Office meeting, and a deal that could redefine Ukraine's future. This is the story of Ukraine's latest agreement with the United States. Despite friction during talks with President Donald Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky signaled that Ukraine is ready to sign a minerals deal with Washington. But is this a strategic move or a desperate compromise? Obviously, this agreement is not just about minerals. It is about power, security, and survival. All of this is more coming, but first the news headlines. Aviadi urges Tinubu to release Nnamdi Kanu. Mysterious illness strikes Congo village. WHO suspect water contamination. Trump and Vance erupt at Zelensky intense Oval Office meeting. US suspends offensive cyber operations against Russia. Israel blocks aid to Gaza. Zelensky ready to sign mineral deal despite tense meeting with Trump. Now to the news in details. Aviadi urges Tinubu to release Nnamdi Kanu. In a strongly worded letter dated 26th February, the VID led by President Dr. Sylvester Hoya and Secretary Dr. Gustin Obiagu did not mince words. They made it clear. Kanu's detention is no longer a legal debate. It is a political question. The President Tinubu has the power to settle. The group insists that Nigeria's judiciary has already spoken on the matter. Court after court is ruled in favor of Kanu's release, yet he remains behind bars. Aviadi argues that this continued detention is a direct violation of not just Kanu's rights, but of the very laws the Nigerian government claims to uphold. So the big question is, if the court says he should be free, why is he still in detention? Aviadi's argument isn't based on emotions or politics alone. It is backed by legal decisions. Federal High Court, on October 26, 2022, declared Kanu's arrest and detention illegal. The court ruled that his extradition from Kenya was unlawful and that the Nigerian government had violated international protocols. The Abia State High Court, on January 19, 2022, ruled that the 2017 military invasion of Kanu's residence was illegal, violating his fundamental rights. The court ordered that the Nigerian government to pay him compensation. The Supreme Court, in December 2023, acknowledged that the military attack on Kanu's home in 2017 forced him to flee, dismissing the government's claim that he jumped bail. The United Nations Human Rights Council, in July 2022, declared Kanu's detention arbitrary and illegal, ordering his immediate release and compensation. Verdi argues that ignoring these rulings weakens Nigeria's judicial system. If court orders can be ignored, what does that say about the rule of law? And if the United Nations is also waiting, why has the Nigerian government refused to act? Kanu's case is not just a legal matter, it is deeply political. His movement, HIPO, has been at the center of the agitation for Biafran independence, a topic that remains controversial in Nigeria's political landscape. The government considers HIPO a separatist threat, and Kanu's rhetoric has often been seen as inflammatory. But this argument is simple. If Nigeria wants to claim it is a democracy, then it must follow its own laws. They are reminding President Tinubu that he has the power to end the saga once and for all, either by restoring Kanu's bail or by ordering the Attorney General to drop the charges. But so far, President Tinubu has remained silent on the matter. His administration inherited the Kanu issue from the previous government of Muhammadu Buhari, which took a hardline stance. But times have changed. Nigeria is back in economic crisis, insecurity, and political unrest. The longer Kanu remains in detention, the more fuel is added to the fire. The decision to release him or keep him in jail could shape Tinubu's legacy. Does he double down on the previous administration's approach, or does he take a different path? This is more than just a question of one man's freedom. It is about Nigeria's legal system, its democracy, and its global reputation. If the government continues to ignore court rulings, it sends a message. Justice in Nigeria is selective. So what is watching? The question is, will President Tinubu listen? Mysterious illness strikes Congo village. WHO suspects water contamination. A health disaster is unfolding in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Once again, the world is watching from a distance. A deadly illness swept through the remote village of Bomit, leaving at least 60 people dead and over 1,000 infected. Now, the World Health Organization, WHO, believes water contamination could be to blame. The real question is, how did it get this bad? This is not a new story for the Congo. Decades of weak governance, neglected infrastructure, and an overwhelmed healthcare system have turned outbreaks into routine tragedies. But this time, the scale of the crisis is alarming.
The first cases of the unknown illness were reported in January in the village of Boloko in the DRC's northwestern province of Equateur. 3 children who reportedly ate a bat died after developing fever, headache, and diarrhea. Similar symptoms of the illness have been detected in another village. Health experts say the disease has been spreading rapidly, with nearly half of the deaths occurring within 48 hours. The World Health Organization has sent experts to help Congolese authorities to identify and stop the unknown disease from spreading further. They conducted tests on 13 samples which turned out negative for Ebola and Marburg. Now they are investigating illnesses such as malaria, typhoid, meningitis, and other viral hemorrhagic fevers.
A village of just a few thousands has become the epicenter of a deadly outbreak, and experts fear it could spread. The symptoms are severe fever, vomiting, diarrhea, and acute dehydration. Families are watching their loved ones collapse, with little to no medical help available. While initial reports suggested an unidentified disease, WHO officials now suspect that the real culprit may be lurking in the village water supply. The WHO spokesperson stated, "We are looking into the waterborne contamination, possibly linked to bacterial toxins. this could be an issue of poor sanitation, chemical spill, or an undetected outbreak of a known disease. Samples from wells and nearby water sources have been sent for testing, but results could take days. Meanwhile, people continue to fall sick. The only advice from officials so far: boil your water. A simple, almost absurd solution, except many villagers don't even have access to the basic means to do that. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is no stranger to health disaster. Cholera, malaria, Ebola, the country has fought them all. But the problem is, the battles never end. Rural communities remain trapped in a cycle of illness and neglect. According to health officials, Mumet's lack of clean drinking water and poor sanitation conditions created the perfect breeding ground for an outbreak. The village, like many others in the region, relies on untreated water from rivers and wells. With no proper filtration or sanitation system, contamination is inevitable. Local health workers are doing what they can, but the response has been slow. The village is remote, medical supplies are limited, and access to proper healthcare is nearly non-existent. By the time help arrives, it is often too late. To make matters worse, the region is also battling a surge in malaria cases. Many of those falling sick have tested positive for malaria, making it difficult to determine if this outbreak is an entirely new threat or a complication of existing health crisis. People are dying too quickly for this to be just malaria, local doctor told reporters. We need full-scale investigations, not just assumptions. But despite these concerns, the government's response has been sluggish. There are no mass screenings, no emergency water distributions, and no immediate plans for a large-scale medical response. Here is the reality. Had this outbreak happened in Europe or North America, the response would have been swift and massive. International aid agencies will be pouring in, but this is Congo, a country that has been abandoned by the world unless its problems spill across borders. And this is the same world that mobilized billions overnight for Ukraine but struggles to send clean water and medical supplies to a dying village in Africa. The same world that debates climate change conferences in air-conditioned halls, while people in Equator province die from drinking filthy water. For now, the WHO is leading investigations, but real action is needed. Testing alone won't stop people from dying. The Congolese government must act urgently to provide clean water, medical care, and disease prevention programs. The world must also wake up. This is not just a Congo problem. Waterborne diseases kill millions every year, and climate change is only making things worse. What's happening in Bime today could happen elsewhere tomorrow. The WHO is expected to release its final report soon. But the truth is already clear. This crisis was preventable. The people of Bome didn't have to suffer like this. They were simply forgotten. Trump and Vance take on Zelensky in heated Oval Office clash. The much anticipated Oval Office meeting between President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky turned into a political battlefield.
Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, We are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't been
in this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said thank
stupid
you.
president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and your
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about West?
If you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days.
Exposing Washington's growing impatience with Kyiv. What was meant to be a diplomatic discussion on Ukraine's war effort quickly escalated into a tense standoff, with Trump and Vance making it clear America's checkbook is closer, and Zelensky must rethink his strategy. The Ukrainian president arrived in Washington seeking reassurances. After months of uncertainty about US support, Zelensky hoped to secure continued military aid. But he walked into an administration that is no longer interested in playing the role of Ukraine's financiers. According to sources inside the meeting, Trump wasted no time in setting the tone. He reportedly told Zelensky, "This isn't the Biden administration. We don't do endless wars." The message was clear. Ukraine is no longer at the center of US foreign policy. Vice President J.D. Vance, a vocal critique of US involvement in Ukraine, was even more direct. Americans didn't sign up to fund a war with no exit strategy, he told Zelensky. The 40-year-old VP, known for his staunch America First stance, has long argued that US taxpayers should not be bankrolling conflicts that have no clear resolution. For Zelensky, this meeting was a last-ditch effort, with European allies hesitant to commit more funds and Ukraine forces strengthening. He needed Washington to stand firm. He emphasized the consequences of cutting aid, warning that any reduction in US support would embolden Russia and weaken Ukraine's defense. But Trump was unimpressed. He reportedly pressed Zelensky on corruption concerns, asking for a detailed account of how past aid had been used. Trump's skepticism over Ukraine's financial transparency is well known, and this meeting only reinforced his stance. Before he asked for more, "Tell me where the last billions went," he said to have remarked. This meeting marks a turning point in US-Ukraine relations. The Biden administration had framed Ukraine's war as a fight for democracy, justifying billions in aid with no clear accountability. But the Trump administration sees things differently. There is no more unlimited support. The new doctrine is simple. America's resources must serve American interests first. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz later reinforced this shift, telling reporters that Zelensky is welcome in Washington anytime, but only if he comes prepared to discuss a realistic peace plan. In other words, the White House is signaling that diplomacy, not endless conflict, is the way forward. The fallout from this meeting is already being felt across Europe. With Trump dialing back US involvement, European leaders are scrambling to decide their next move. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who attended a separate summit with Zelensky in London, admitted he felt uncomfortable watching the US-Ukraine tensions unfold. European allies, long reliant on Washington's leadership, are now realizing they may have to shoulder more of the burden themselves. But with their own economies under strain and political divisions mounting, will they be able to step up? Or is Ukraine heading toward a new phase, one without the unconditional backing it once enjoyed? The message from Washington is clear. The days of unquestioned US support for Ukraine are over. If Zelensky wants continued assistance, he must prove that Ukraine can be self-reliant, transparent, and committed to peace. For now, the ball is in his court. But one thing is certain, this Oval Office clash was more than just a disagreement. It was a wake-up call. US suspends offensive cyber operations against Russia. In a move that sent shockwaves through the national security establishment, the United States has suspended all offensive cyber operations against Russia. This decision, confirmed by senior officials, raises critical questions. Is this a calculated diplomatic maneuver, or is the US walking straight into a cyber ambush? For years, the US Cyber Command, Cybercom, has been engaged in a silent, high-stakes war in cyberspace, one where Russia has been a primary adversary. From election interference to ransomware attacks on critical infrastructure, Moscow's cyber units have consistently targeted the US and its allies. Yet, despite this, Washington has decided to pull the plug on its cyber offensives. The official explanation? A policy recalibration under the Trump administration. But experts warn that this could leave the US exposed, potentially inviting bolder Russian cyber incursions. According to multiple reports, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth issued a direct order to halt all US offensive cyber operations targeting Russia. This includes cyber disruptions, counter-hacking missions, and intelligence-driven digital warfare. The reason? A shift in diplomatic strategy. The Trump administration has been signaling a recalibration of relations with Moscow, particularly in the context of Ukraine and NATO tensions. The cyber ceasefire is seen as a confidence-building measure, a way to reduce hostilities in the digital realm. But here is the problem: Russia has not reciprocated. Russian cyber units remain active, with persistent threats targeting US infrastructure, financial institutions, and government agencies. This raises the obvious questions. If Moscow isn't backing down, why is Washington? For years, the US has been locked in an invisible war with Russia's state-sponsored hackers, groups like Fancy Bear, Cozy Bear, and Sandworm. These units have been linked to some of the most damaging cyber attacks in history, from 2016 DNC email leaks to the SolarWinds breach that infiltrated US government networks. The response from Washington has been measured but firm. Offensive cyber campaigns designed to disrupt Russian operations, infiltrate the networks, and deter further attacks. Moscow, for its part, has remained tight-lipped about Washington's decision. Russian cyber operations continue unchecked, with recent reports of hacking attempts on US energy grids, financial institutions, and even military networks. In 2023, Russian-linked groups like Killnet and Revil ramped up ransomware attacks on US hospitals and corporations. Despite clear evidence of state involvement, Russia has never been held accountable. Now, with the US stepping back, experts fear that Moscow could escalate further, testing the boundaries of American restraint. Cybersecurity analyst Rebecca Collins warns, Russia is opportunistic. If they sense weakness, they will exploit it. This is a gift to them. The time is also critical, with tensions over Ukraine still simmering. Cyber warfare is one of the few pressure points Moscow has. If the US is seen as retreating from digital confrontation, it could embolden Russia into other areas, the battlefield, in diplomacy, and beyond. The immediate concern is US critical infrastructure. American power grids, water supplies, and communication networks have long been prime targets for Russian cyber attacks. A recent intelligence assessment found that Russian hackers could disable part of the US power grid within minutes if they launch a coordinated cyber attack. These vulnerabilities have been known for years. And offensive cyber operations were one of the few deterrents the US had to keep Russian hackers in check. Now, with offensive operations suspended, there is growing fear that Russia could launch more aggressive cyber campaigns, knowing there will be no immediate retaliation. The suspension of cyber operations is not permanent, at least not yet. The Trump administration has indicated that this is part of a broader strategic shift, not an abandonment of cyber warfare altogether. However, if this move is truly about diplomacy, then there is one critical question. What is Russia offering in return? Has the Kremlin agreed to scale back its own cyber operations? No. Has Moscow promised to stop interfering in US domestic affairs? No. Has Russia made any verifiable commitment to de-escalate in cyberspace? No. So what exactly is Washington getting out of this? The answer so far, nothing. Some analysts say that the only thing that could justify this decision is if the US has secured a classified cyber accord, a behind-the-scenes agreement where both nations agree to limit cyber hostilities. But there is no evidence of such a deal. For now, Russia keeps hacking, and the US stops fighting back. The suspension of offensive cyber operation is a risky gamble. If the move is part of a larger geopolitical chess game, then it needs to yield tangible results. A de-escalation from Russia, a diplomatic breakthrough, or a new framework for cyber warfare rules. But if this is simply unilateral retreat, then Washington has just gifted Moscow an open playing field in cyberspace. The coming months will be critical. If Russian cyber attacks intensify, this decision will be seen as one of the biggest national security blunders in years. But if diplomacy somehow prevails and cyber tensions ease, the Trump administration will claim a strategic victory. The question remains, is this strategy or is it surrender? Israel choked aid to Gaza. For Tel Aviv, this is the pressure tactic, the way to force Hamas to the negotiating table.
Hearing people talking about their fears and concerns over the statements and the Israeli persistence of extending phase 1 of the ceasefire over, or rather than moving into phase 2 as agreed upon with the agreement between Israel and Hamas.
We don't want war anymore. Enough is enough. We had more than enough from this war. We want to live like all other people of the world.
But at the heart of this crisis are the people of Gaza. Over 2 million of them. After months of war, they're already struggling with the severe food shortages, the collapsing healthcare system, and no safe place to go. Many have been displaced multiple times, yet now, even the limited aid that was trickling in has stopped. The Rafah border crossing, Gaza's primary link to the outside world, is now closed to supplies. The Korean Shalom crossing, controlled by Israel, is also short. For those living in makeshift tents, but they enjoyed waiting for medical help, for children who have only known war, this is nothing short of a death sentence. Israeli officials argue that aid deliveries have been exploited before. They claim Hamas has hijacked power shipments, using them to resupply fighters instead of feeding civilians. But where is the proof? And even if that was true, does it justify cutting off an entire population from life-saving resources? Hamas, meanwhile, is refusing to budge. The group has labeled Israel's demand as a war crime and insists that any ceasefire negotiations should include long-term guarantees. The spokesperson made it clear, we will not be pressured into an unfair deal. Humanitarian aid is a right, it's not a bargaining chip. But behind the tough words, the reality is that Hamas is also under pressure. It faces growing unrest within Gaza. Many civilians, though unwilling to speak openly, blame both sides for their suffering. Hamas knows that agreeing to Israel's term could make them appear weak. Yet, rejecting the deal means prolonging the humanitarian catastrophe. So what comes next? As the standoff continues, the humanitarian situation in Gaza grows more desperate by the hour. No aid means no food, no medicine, no fear. Hospitals that are still functioning will soon run out of supplies. Starvation and disease are no longer distant threats. They are happening now. Will Israel stop softening its stance under international pressure? Will Hamas rethink its position? Or will the people of Gaza continue to pay the price for what they had no say in? These are the questions yet to be answered. The clock is ticking. The world is watching. But for those trapped in Gaza, hope is fading fast. Ukraine's minerals deal with US Zelensky ready to sign, despite tense Trump meeting. At the heart of this deal is Ukraine's vast natural wealth. The country holds massive reserves of rare earth minerals, natural gas, and oil, resources that are critical for modern technology, energy, and defense industries. The US is keen to tap into these resources to reduce its dependence on China, which currently dominate the rare earth supply chain. In return, Ukraine hopes for significant American investment to rebuild its war-ravaged economy. But here is where it gets tricky. Ukraine is not just looking for economic partnerships. It is looking for security. Zelensky wants to ensure that US involvement extends beyond business deals. He wants guarantees that American companies operating in Ukraine will be protected and that Washington remains committed to Kyiv's defense. The next question is whether Ukraine will get the additional security assurances it is seeking. Will the US eventually step up its defense commitment? Or will Kyiv be left to fend for itself? For now, Ukraine is playing the long game, signing the deal and hoping that deeper economic ties will eventually lead to stronger political and military backing. But in the unpredictable world of geopolitics, there are no guarantees. One thing is certain, Ukraine is betting big on this deal. Whether that bet pays off remains to be seen. Before I go, once again the news headlines. Vivaldi urges Tinubu to release Nnamdi Kanu. Mysterious illness strikes Congo village. WHO suspects water contamination. Trump and Vance wrapped Zelensky in intense Oval Office meeting. US suspend offensive cyber operations against Russia. Israel blocks aid to Gaza. Zelensky ready to sign military deal despite tense meeting with Trump. Thanks for staying tuned. Once again, I'm MARYAM Olugbote.